Hello, hello, welcome back to Loki's Librarian. If you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina, and this is where I am reading through the enormous library books you see behind me, and then I give you a quick synopsis and tell you what I think about them. So if you like books, just aren't sure what to read next, hit that subscribe button, like and share my videos, and let me know what you think in the comments. There are 5 Sundays this month, so I'm starting my month off with a fiction read, this month ending the Kingmaker series by Ari H. Mendelson with the final book, Just Power. The accompanying cocktail is called Cup of Justice. It is 1.5 ounces of Amaro, a 1/2 ounce of Elderflower Liqueur, a 1/2 ounce of Cognac, and 2 drops of chocolate bitters. So let's do this. I'm going to jump into the cocktail right away because it's not a very long review. That's okay. When we left off with Due Process, which is book 2, the beautiful starlet Megan Peters had made her escape from the villain Neville and managed to keep herself entirely off-grid, which is actually not very easy in today's... I knew I wasn't going to have enough. I knew I wasn't going to have enough in the tiny little bottle of Amaro, which is why I bought a second bottle. So she managed to keep herself off-grid and successfully made her way to Indiana, where she joined up with hero Jonathan Hall and his entire company, his band of merry men. Once she gets there, Hall, of course, he's a journalist, of course, he is going to, at this point, do an interview with Megan, and while he's talking to her, he kind of pieces together the possibility of what may have really happened with his friend Kevin and Kevin's now ex-girlfriend Carolyn. And this book kind of races towards denouement at this point. It's kind of heading that way, and well, obviously it had to end that way because there's only 3 books in the series. I'm not multitasking well today. I've been trying, but not been multitasking well. So so Hall pieces together there during her interview. Hall kind of pieces together what may have happened with Kevin and Kevin's ex-girlfriend Carolyn, but he doesn't say anything to Kevin because he doesn't want to put false hope in his heart, basically, that maybe because he could be wrong, right? He might be mistaken about the breadth and scope of what Neville has been up to. So what they do is they convince Downy Duckling and his group of hackers that the real danger here is the ability to manipulate people. And of course there are those who ran because they just wanted to basically pull the Wall Street Bets thing like they did with GameStop a few years ago. I'll see if I can find a link to something about that. For those of you who don't know, Wall Street Bets was a Reddit subgroup. It is a Reddit subgroup, and they basically managed to bring GameStop to its knees with their with their stock trades. And there are, of course, those who thought they could do the same thing with Neville and end up very rich. And I'm sure they would have, but Downy Duckling was more out for revenge because he, just 2 drops. 2 drops of chocolate bitters, just 2. So, but anyways, those Downy Duckling decides, no, we're gonna go for the vengeance path and see if we can put a stop to Neville, like cold stop. We don't want this to keep going on the way it has, and we don't want to necessarily bankrupt him. Most of these events take place like within a week of the election. Neville is, of course, pissed that Megan did a runner and that his AI can't find her, but the show must go on. His Chinese backers demand results, and he is able to deliver in spades. The final snag on delivery of this tech that we all know is very evil and horrifying is that for tech of this magnitude would need government approval to export from the United States. I actually don't think that's a fictional plot. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. When you get to a certain point with your technical capabilities, the government gets very interested in what you're capable of delivering. Let me stir this up. So what that means for Neville is if he is going to deliver on what he promised to the Chinese, then that means the doddering old president who is barely able to speak a coherent sentence and can only appear in public with trusted handlers must win the next election, which is why the party in power is coming so hard after the challengers to this power. And this is kind of a direct quote from the book, which was kind of horrifying, actually. For the losing candidate in this last presidential race, the second prize was a prison term. If former presidents get to live like billionaires and their former challengers go to prison, then politicians better make sure they win. Which, well, I mean, kind of hard to argue with how prescient Mendelson is when that's kind of exactly what just happened last week, isn't it? What an absolute fucking clown court that was. There's clown shoes everywhere, man. And it's pretty clever how they plan to steal the election, actually. Because, of course, most people especially in the wake of our own, real life 2020 election, were screaming about the technology and how evil it was and it didn't work and fraud and blah, blah, blah. Instead, they opt for absolute transparency with the electronics and good old-fashioned forgery furnished courtesy of China's Uyghur work camps to supply the fake ballots, all right? But the machines used to count the votes, 100% above board, all right? So with the data hack courtesy of Downy Duckling and his merry band of rebels, the heroes know that these forged ballots are on their way to Indiana, because Indiana is the major swing state in this book. It's the only one that really matters because everything else is more or less decided. And so all they have to do to prevent evil from winning is be the good men who are willing to act. They have to catch the delivery drivers and either turn them over to the police, intercept and destroy the ballots, or catch the delivery on film for another undercover expose. And I am not going to tell you which route they went because, spoilers, if I tell you which route they went, you have no reason to buy the book and figure it out, do you? Now, regardless, they do succeed because the good guys do win, at least in fiction. And Neville goes down, which was a relief. And the governor, who wins Indiana and ousts the doddering old fool, is a blessed idealist. And I mean, really, the only unbelievable part of the whole series was the governor's altruistic stance on what it means to hold power. And everything else about this was freakily believable. I mean, like, you could see this playing out. You could see the people being just that obsessed with power and getting their way and destroying everybody in their path that stop them from achieving their vision of utopia. And then you get the governor, the president-elect, and I don't think he's ever called anything other than the governor. I mean, I'm sure there's a name and I just missed it, but he's an idealist. And we the people are far too cynical to ever vote for an idealist. Maybe we would have at one time, but we're not anymore, unfortunately. But it was a lovely escape into fantasy because, well, I mean, hell, in reality, it doesn't even matter if the people running are idealists, because we know they're not, right? We all know that no politician running this year, or pretty much ever, is in fact an idealist. They are all more likely to use Neville's manipulation software as Neville intended, to consolidate their own power and destroy their enemies. But it's nice to imagine a day when we the people might jump off the rotating carousel of lesser evil and actually vote on principle again. This is a really good cocktail. I kind of like it. And a century and a half of voting for the lesser evil has left evil firmly with the reins of power in their greedy little grasps. But the governor, this idealistic, perfect future man, God willing we actually have one day, he sees a way to turn this software in towards helping humanity and provides multiple ways it could do just that, and points out, quite rightly, that since it now exists, this is not a genie you can just shove back into a bottle, right? All we can do is turn it towards a better purpose. And about the only way to reverse the clock on 30 years of internet use and social media insanity would be a massive EMP that would wipe out all electronics globally. And as entertaining as that thought might be, there's a reason that such scenarios are labeled post-apocalyptic fiction. I mean, humanity would be set so far back on its forward trajectory should such a thing happen that we would literally be returned to the Dark Ages. I mean, who's to say it hasn't happened all before, right? The writing was very much edge of my seat again, and I think in all, I read this book in about 8 hours. It was a very quick read. I quite enjoyed the series as a whole, and as artificial intelligence is making its way in the world, I think Mendelson's vision of possibilities, both for good and for bad, is alarmingly spot on. He did, as promised in book 1, he provided a list of the resources that he's drawn on for this. The Facebook data hacks from the 2016, I think it had to be the 2016 election, because that's the one that had everybody losing their absolute fucking minds when Trump won. And then, of course, with COVID, 2020, we know just how bad and corrupt and manipulative Twitter was, which is why his fictional company that Neville runs is called Chirp. It's a direct slap at that. Don't get me wrong, Facebook is certainly not left out of the loop. He based his election technology, that's the word I'm looking for, his election technology was based very much on the algorithms that Zuckerberg came up with for Facebook. So it was all equally horrifying. It's like I said, it's all alarmingly spot on. I mean, we see the potential for this, for AI, for it being a very real thing as far back as Heinlein in Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I mean, heaven help us if Neville's wingman program ever reaches Mike's level of sentience, especially with somebody as corrupt and vile as Neville behind the wheel. And we're all just lucky in Moon is a Harsh Mistress that it was Manny that was the friend and not Neville. Oh my God. This whole series has kind of left me with my brain spinning because, again, the possibilities, it's right there. And that's where the real horror of this series lies, is that it's so possible. Everything in here is so possible. You could see it happening. You could see the corruption, the vileness, the manipulation. It's a good series. I would recommend all three of them. And that's it for this week. Like I said, it's a very short review. It's not very long because the book was very fast. It raced towards its end game. And I enjoyed it. And that's it for this week. If you like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe. And I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye.